11FS. This is Fintech Insider News live from the Village Underground in Shoreditch. I am Ross Gallagher, the head of consulting at 11FS, and tonight we're covering Robinhood wants to become a super app for family finance. The big three Irish banks have a new plan to fight off the fintechs, and did year in Monzo go too far? To discuss these and some more of the biggest stories in fintech this week, I'm joined by a quite frankly brilliant panel of fintech experts. First up, we have my very beautiful co-host, Jamie Campbell, Deputy CEO at 11FS Holdings.
Such good compliments. Thank you so much.
Lovely to see you as always.
Beautiful. I very rarely get called beautiful.
I know, we should stop flirting.
I know. This is the unscripted bit where we have like little banter between the two of us.
This is cleaner than what we came up with in the
Yeah, you give me a compliment and I'll respond positively to it. And then, yeah, we'll keep going like that.
I'm going to defer back to the show notes to save us and get us back on track. How are you doing, Jamie?
Yeah, good, really good. Yeah, it's exciting to be here. I was satellited in quite late due to David's absence, but I'm really excited to be here. It's always nice to turn up and see the community turning out. So thanks for turning up on a Tuesday to talk about fintech. It's always great to see so many people.
Already doing a wonderful job.
Thanks.
All right. Next, we have Helen Bearton, Chief Digital Officer, Consumer Relationships at Lloyds Banking Group. Helen, great to have you on Fintech Insider. Obviously, you're bravely representing the established banks. Maybe you can just give everyone here a little bit more information about yourself and your role at Lloyds.
Absolutely. Well, first of all, thank you for inviting me on St. Patrick's Day, which is very green. And for those that are listening, I'm in green for Lloyds and St. Patrick's Day.
This is a podcast, obviously, so there's no video, but I appreciate the effort nonetheless.
We did stipulate no prop comedy in the green room.
The green room. There we go. I have a super privilege of helping 23 million customers connect their finances through technology to lead better financial lives. And it's a super privilege. I am, for my sins, a banker. I've worked in the industry for too long. But I'm super proud of it, actually. It plays a really critical role. And I'm proud of what we do. But I am also a fintecher. And I think the power of digital and tech to help customers is just incredibly powerful. So super excited to be here.
Yeah, great to have you, Helen. Thanks so much. Next, we have Clem Salon, CTO and co-founder of Formance. Clem, great to have you. Welcome to After Dark. Maybe again, you can just introduce yourself to everyone in the room and everyone listening at home.
Yeah, thanks for having me. So I'm Clem, co-founder, CTO at Formance, and we task ourselves with building the most programmable, solid core ledger. So essentially work with fintech in investing, lending, insurance, and make sure they can essentially keep track of their balances, users' balances. So if you've been an engineer writing code that's tops up a balance for a user and have been afraid of doing so, of making a critical mistake, that's kind of the problem points that you address. So happy to be with you tonight. Thanks for having me.
Love that, Clem. Glad to have you. Thank you. And last but by no means least, Marusha Naidu, Global Head of Partnerships at Paymentology. Thanks so much for joining us. Great to have you. Again, maybe you can just introduce yourself and a little bit of background around what you do at Paymentology.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. We're so excited to be here on St. Patrick's Day. And of course, I'm from Paymentology, so to be one of the sponsors is really special. Like they said, I am Marusha Naidu, Global Head of Partnerships at Paymentology. We are a global next-gen issuer processor. And my role is really to put together the strategy for partners. Partners is such an important role in what we do as fintechs because it's all about how we build and grow together. No one can do it alone. And so I have the exciting role of looking after partnerships, building those ecosystems, and really creating solid foundations for our customers and our customers' customers. So really excited to be here and to go through the exciting articles.
Awesome.
I was going to say, great panel. Thanks everyone for being here.
Let's crack on. Yeah. Okay. But yeah, you're right. It is an amazing panel. I don't think we've disappointed. All right. Well, look, I think then all we need really is some news. So let's get into the show. Thank you for that. Really useful prompt. Our first story we want to cover today comes from Finextra with a headline, Robinhood bids to become super app for family finance. Super app's a neat idea.
Yeah, sounds like a great idea.
All right. The Family Hub, which is a quote, will let users view and manage accounts across different family members in one place. The platform will allow parents to open custodial investment accounts for their children, set up recurring investments, and even let friends and relatives contribute to a child's portfolio for birthdays or milestones. The company's CEO, Vlad Tenev, says the ambition is to help families invest, plan, and grow wealth across generations, all within the Robinhood app. I mean, the heart of this is managing money for someone else in your family. So I'm kind of curious to know, maybe we can just start with a show of hands. Who sort of in tonight is kind of managing money for someone else in their family? Yeah, quite a lot.
It's not an insignificant amount of people, is it?
No,
What would
it's
you
not.
say? Maybe like a sixth?
Yeah.
Quarter, maybe?
Which kind of points to this being a relevant use case, right?
Yeah, for sure. And I think the concept of creating a structure that can appeal to a family unit and can be relevant for a family unit, I think is really important. And I think will be an ever increasing frontier of wealth services. It's well known that when wealth changes hands, the inheritor of the wealth has a completely different view and opinion of what to do with that money. And so they'll change their advisor, they'll put it somewhere else. And so it is quite a good strategic decision to start building a relationship deeper into, the lineage of a family from a business perspective, but also giving younger audiences more exposure to good practice when it comes to wealth building and education. So I think on a number of fronts, this is a really sensible move, and I think it's going to come down to nailing how they structure this. It's in the article, it goes into a little bit of detail around how they're kind of creating these accounts which are managed on behalf of others. But I think, we'll see. We're probably going to see a lot more of this as other players start to catch up and look into that space.
Helen, one of the things that Jamie mentioned that I think will resonate is this idea of giving people the relevant tools, the education, the context to sort of achieve better financial outcomes. That in itself maybe feels like a bit of a shift from how we've thought about maybe financial products for a really long time.
Yeah, I think this is a super smart move and actually really, really exciting to see. I agree with everything Jamie said. I think the hands up in the room shows, financial services and are super connected when it comes to your families and your life. This is in real life. The connection with your family and is there. But when it comes to the products, and so it's actually quite fragmented still. There are a couple of thoughts on this article for me. The first was around your point around opening it up in education and support. But there's many forms of that support that are needed. There are many circumstances I can think of, families and carers, or me and my kids. I want to teach my kids how to. So the concept of connection, I think, is really super important. And if we can unlock technology to create visibility and transparency, does that open up a conversation that perhaps hasn't been as easy a conversation as it perhaps should have been to get the right financial outcome? And then the second thing that's really interesting about this, you touched on it, is it's really important that people start investing and start building long-term savings. And if through technology we can open that up, open the conversation up, make it easier, and start creating those habits. I mean, one of the things we found, more than one product starts to get complex, but you could make it really simple and put like ready-made investments into an existing app experience, and actually more people engage with it, and then more people benefit from it. This is a really important topic, and it's great to see this is happening more and more.
I think the main thing that you said that sort of resonates with me is it's starting up a conversation about good financial behaviors and managing finances in family units. So it's doing it in context. But we all know that like trying to teach someone something conceptually is very different to actually sort of working through it with them and kind of them seeing the outcomes off the back of that.
Yeah, I completely agree.
And one of the specific things they're talking about is like the gifting of like an investment into an account that's managed by the primary account holder, but on behalf of a child or a dependent or or someone else, and you know providing a product and technology and infrastructure to support that flow that kind of happens in some cases quite casually, but providing like a real wrapper around it, which is productized and is accessible. I think is really interesting, and I totally agree. I think that, like moving this forward, I think there's going to be much more interesting innovations on this frontier of how do we take a view of a group of individuals who have interconnected relationships rather than just like one person who's earning the money, and we're kind of not really bothered about everything else that's kind of happening.
I like your point on interconnected relationships as well. The big thing about this is we know, and it has been proven in financial services, the number one reason somebody chooses a financial services provider is recommendation. And the super smart thing about this is it not only does it open up the conversation, it opens up that again, like recommendation. We've been able to reward customers for introducing it, but it's built on a foundation of trust. It's built on a connection. It's built on recommendation. There's so much to unpick about the connecting component.
Clem, I think we all sort of agree that there are real benefits and sort of good, probably long-term consumer outcomes of this type of proposition. But I'm guessing from a technology perspective, delivering these types of propositions are non-trivial, right? Because I think if it was easy, we'd have probably nailed it a long time ago, right?
Yeah, definitely. So coming from the perspective ledger builder, yeah, for sure. This is one of the things where things can get pretty nasty pretty fast. Like you're not only tracking a balance of a user, but like the whole context around it and the actual people behind it making the decision. So this is one of the things where I think building this kind of products, it gets super important to dissociate the level of like ownership vs decision making and try to structure something at the fundamental level where you can really fine grain the whole like authorization and permissioning and granting of permission of actions doing over funds, and then try to translate that into all the locals like regulatory framework that you're going to deploy in, and make sure that you really dissociate the beneficiary from the one acting on it, and yeah, this is like something where you're all going to end up with a quite sophisticated structure for sure. But yeah, equally excited to see these kind of products appearing as well. Like this is one of the upgrades that you get from being the computer person to the finance person in a company, maybe, and you want to be able to change hats, act in the best interest of the person you're investing on behalf of, and this needs to translate into visible audit trails that everyone can understand. So there's no doubt. So yeah.
Yeah, so kind of requires like non-traditional sort of product constructs and definitions and all of that sort of stuff that I think, but it feels like progress insofar as actually I think you break outside of some of those constraints, and then maybe some of the outcomes that you can deliver for consumers, you can start to rethink some of those as well, right?
Yeah, you don't want it to be a hot pot of like things going on, but yeah, for sure, like making it super visible to the people being managed in their money on behalf of like of what is the level of control, and building this whole like framework is going to be interesting to see like all the different apps approach this level of like delegation. So excited to see more companies doing this and see how to approach this kind of permissioning, because for all you know, like it could be like different kind of relationship. Maybe it's a friend, maybe it's a family person, and if you want to go creative and let friends manage money for other friends, it's not the same thing as the same like direct family relationship. So quite a lot of building to do to get there.
Marishi, do you think this is like the beginning of a trend? I mean, are we going to start to maybe just break out beyond just sort of individual products, maybe joint sort of products, and sort of maybe something that's a little bit more tailored towards the different types of family constructs and all of that sort of stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. I think if you look at how we as human beings live and evolve, right? It's all about families, it's about relationships, it's about parent to child, or it's about, looking after even your parents. I think you mentioned it, even caregivers. So when you look at how we evolve as people, you have to make sure that you have the financial tools to also service that same kind of lifestyle. And so we're seeing a lot of these kind of family apps come up, and Robinhood is not the first. So we've seen the likes of Wheel Bank in the UAE come out with UAE Family Card. And I think it speaks a lot to the evolution of how we as people operate, right? It used to be cash. Now, as we evolve to a cashless society, we have to make sure that we have those tools for our family. So, creating a virtual card so your child can buy V-Bucks is a real thing. Being able to restrict that and saying, okay, you've reached your limit for the day, and that's about it. That has become the norm. But I think what Robinhood have done is they've taken it to the next level and saying, okay, how do we really build financial literacy from a really young age? How do we make investment normal? How do we make the gifting aspect something like, I don't need to buy you Lego, I'll buy you shares in this, I'll buy you. And it's a completely different way of managing funds and interacting with funds. And I think it's so important for that to be embedded from a very young age. I think there was a study done that said most people in the UK actually don't know how to invest. And when they do want to start investing, they have no idea where to start or how. And so now we're teaching the younger generation to say, actually, this is how you do it, and it becomes a part of their everyday lives. And so I think it's absolutely critical. We also see the Monzo card where they have the parent to child card. So a lot of these digital banks are really taking up the challenge to say, yes, this is important to individuals and families and households. And we have to make sure that we have the tools, the mechanisms, and controls to make it relevant, but also the balance of control versus flexibility. And I think that's really important.
Yeah, I think that there's a kind of a macro or like a top of this trend, which is like more empathetic FS that comes from the institutions that can, provide products on a level that mirror the lives of the clients, which is the point you're kind of making.
Exactly.
And I don't know where the AI gong is, but I'm about to ring it. But like it all kind of that specific technology advancement, drives this, this trend of, FS businesses, whether it's banking, whether it's wealth, being able to be more empathetic with their clients, building products and, delivering a service that can be more empathetic to fit the lives of their clients in a way that is, is going to be more complex, as you say, but it is. It really is this newer, this frontier of financial services. That's just it's gonna feel more personal. It's gonna feel more tailored to you, but it's gonna be kind of built around the actual lives and mirror the lives of their clients. I think it's an excellent point.
And to that point, it's, that hyper personalization is what customers are after. And so when you look at it, it's not about just having one customer equals one account. It's one household, which means multiple wallets, multiple cards, multiple controls. And so it's really about saying, how do we make sure that those tools are accessible, but understanding that family model, which is so critical to all of our daily
and the
lives.
dynamic.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I like that. It feels very appropriate for St. Patrick's Day that we're sort of off on a very optimistic note. Also, our next story is just so perfect for St. Patrick's Day, so I am going to move us on. This is a story that comes from FinExtra. The headline is Irish Banks Launch P2P Service. That felt seamless.
It was very seamless. That was really seamless. That was good. That was good.
So Ireland's three biggest banks, AIB, Bank of Ireland, and Permanent TSB, are launching a new peer-to-peer payments service called, it looks like ZipPay, but it's also one word, so maybe ZipPay. The service will let customers send and request money using just a phone number directly inside their banking apps with a potential reach of over 5 million customers. The goal is pretty clear: to take on challenger bank competitors, particularly Revolut, which has built a huge presence in Ireland. Jamie, I'll come to you first on this one. I mean, look, on the face of it, this feels like, big banks launch new products, but I think when you dig below the surface, maybe it feels a little bit more cynical.
I don't get this. I don't get it feels very mafioso. Like, this is our playground, keep out. We're going to build a little thing. You're not invited. You don't get the party bag on the way out. Like, you're not in the group. You're not in the cool group. But also, it's on a battlefield that's like sort of who cares? Like peer-to-peer payment, like it's not market defining. It's not like a huge like product that people are looking for an incredibly simple and easy way to kind of make those payments. It doesn't feel differentiated enough to have a pull factor to prevent the flow of clients to something like Revolut. It's not massively differentiating or protectionist in that respect, but it's going to take capital and it's going to take investment and collegiate effort from all of these banks. And so there's a couple of frontiers I just don't really kind of get as a concept. I don't feel like it's going to achieve the thing I think they want to achieve. And I think as my kind of protest against it, I'm going to call it ZipPay.
That's a very noble protest.
Even if, because I'm not sure, I don't know if it is ZipPay with the double P,
capital P,
or if it's just ZipPay. Yeah. And ZipPay sounds kind of fancy, and so yeah. But I think I'm going to go with ZipPay.
It does sound more exotic. Helen, it'd be interesting just to get the sort of established bank perspective, because this feels very much like a defensive play insofar as they're trying to build that moat, to Jamie's point, and kind of keep everybody else out. But surely their efforts would be better focused on how do we deliver better outcomes for customers.
Well, I'm going to go a slightly different angle to what Jamie's gone. I think, first of all, let's talk about pace. Actually, they've got together 3 banks. They've launched pretty quickly. So it's interesting to see, well, how much investment, what have they actually put into it? But from a customer and product point of view, there's clearly a demand for that simpler payment experience. And if that demand and that experience is going somewhere else, then the bar's been raised, and that's a good thing for customers in Ireland, I would say. So part of me here is actually this is a good thing. This is raising the bar, better experiences, and more choice for customers. And the second thing for me then is you start to look at payments are really complex, actually. It's something that requires trust. It requires the infrastructure. It requires the ability to authorize a payment, settle a payment, check for fraud. And actually, that's an ecosystem. And what's exciting for me about this story is incumbents coming together, doing a service and building it. And I actually think that one of the themes that this starts to point to is that we'll see more and more of that. Will it work? I mean, in America, Zelle launched and within a year took over Venmo. So possibly. And then if we look in the UK, so fintechs, established banks, regulators coming together on variable recurring payments. So I think there's something in this one, actually. An ecosystem, people coming together, and technology starting to operate at pace. I think it's one to watch.
You convinced me.
Oh, good.
That was easy.
But do you think it's going to achieve? I guess my view is like, do I think that this is going to ultimately help them achieve their goal, which is stemming the flow to new challenges? Honestly, I don't think it will in any kind of dramatic way. I mean, we were talking backstage about you've listed the 3 largest banks in Ireland. One of those isn't by customer numbers. Right. Is not, because Revolut is larger. Significantly larger. So that's the kind of, I don't disagree with the novelness of the infrastructure and the collegiate nature, and that's great to see. But it's kind of, will it achieve the objectives is the bit that I'm kind of, I don't know, I'm questioning.
I think that's a good question, and it's going to be interesting to see. I mean, I don't live in Ireland, so I haven't been able to test it.
So we were, I think it would be like, we're saying this when we sort of Irish fintech would be a really niche, like specialist subject on Mastermind. And while I appreciate, Helen, your sort of more, I think you're more generous and optimistic view on what they're doing. The simple fact is that the big Irish players, whether that's the big banks or the acquirers, they have form in trying to shut other people out in sort of cynical ways. They had their own domestic card scheme until that got mandated out by the European regulator. I still can't sort of shake off the feeling that this is probably a more cynical play. And it's not, the Irish market in terms of customer numbers and share of market hasn't been disrupted in the same way as we've seen with other markets. So it does feel more of can we at least slow down the flow of customers that we're losing to some of these other players, if not necessarily stop it entirely, at least when you look at the numbers that Revolut have already managed to achieve there. And of course, now Monzo have launched. But Helen, you did make a really interesting point, which is those sorts of P2P transfers is definitely an area that we've seen fintech providers go after quite aggressively and win customers. Marisha, do you think this is something that could help them achieve an outcome of at least sort of maintaining market share in the immediate term?
So I think when you look at P2P, it's kind of the entry product, right? It's the way to create, habits around customer usage. And once, customers start to spend using P2P, they build behaviors around it. Do I think that this is going to move the needle? No, I don't, right? But it's really important to look at the demographics, right? And especially when you're looking at not the top 3 banks, but 3 banks in Ireland. It's really important to understand the different customer segments. So I think that the older generation who don't like to transfer from one to the other, who are not that tech savvy, I think, yes, they will use it. Also because when you look at it, it is, they automatically included, they're using phone numbers, it's easy for them to do the transfer. So do I think that it will work around those demographics? Absolutely, especially for domestic P2P, because it's simple, it's easy, it's there. Do I think that they're going to take any of the Revolut business? No, I don't. Because the reality is Revolut does so much more than just P2P payments, and that's what customers want. They want Forex, they want card, they want split payments. They also want to operate where their friends and family already are. And the reality is that is Revolut. So when you look at cross-border payments, cross-border P2P, those will all stay with Revolut. That's the reality. But I do think that this is a gateway for the banks to start to challenge Revolut. I do think that they have a long way to go, but this is a good start. P2P is the best way to create behaviors.
And Clem, they have the scale and the distribution. Of course, that gives them a pretty good starting point for launching a feature like this.
Yeah, definitely. And as you've been saying, it's kind of a entry starting product for fintech that I've been building things from scratch. And one of the things I'm gonna be super curious about is to sort of monitor the whole Cold War situation and the activity on the gates between these networks, because I feel like there's gonna be some interesting incentives of banks letting Revolut, for example, access that network, so that when you have the dynamics where maybe a younger person wants to send a payment to an older demographic that is not on Revolut, something can happen where one can stay in Revolut and the other one can stay on their bank, and this kind of movement can still happen. And it's kind of in the interest of the bank of letting that access possible, because this will avoid maybe the pull from the Revolut person to bring someone else to Revolut. And it's probably also in the interest of Revolut to integrate these networks to sort of let their friends send money to the non-Revolut people. So all of the whole architecture of all this, the activity on the gates is something I will sort of be very interested in monitoring in a Cold War situation room.
I was going to say that's a really interesting point, because actually, when you look at, and we've seen this happen across other regions as well. So, for example, PayShop in South Africa, they started with a very simple P2P model, but that was the foundation layer for them to really create a domestic switch service across the country, which is now growing towards, throughout the rest of the continent. So this could be a really smart play for the banks to say, this is the start of us creating a debit network that is interoperable across all of the banks. And like you said, could also include other payment rails like Revolut in the future. But this is a starting point.
And I'm with you 100% on that. If that's the direction of travel, then great. This feels like a much more
more hostile,
positive play.
It feels more hostile there right now.
It's really interesting. I've sort of 2 thoughts. One is in its current setup where it is very much a closed shop. I don't know how long that's a defensible position from a regulatory perspective. It feels anti-competitive. But then my other thought is, and I'm just sort of sitting back and listening to everything that we've talked about on this story, like Revolut, like this story is not about Revolut, but all we're talking about is Revolut. And I don't know if like, do we have a name for that? Like the Revolut effect or something, but maybe it's symbolic of just sort of where they're at and like the size and the scale and just like, it's incredible, isn't it?
But I love that. I love that point of view of like sort of counterintuitive. Like maybe the way that this survives is that you have to open it up because it stems the us and them part of that is required for a successful peer-to-peer network. It's a really, really interesting kind of point of view on it. Definitely.
Yeah, I've seen that play out with friends that are like not on Revolut, and I need to send the money, and I'm like, oh, this, and so, but Revolut happened to have connected themselves to Weir, the European like kind of equivalent of that in some countries in France, and it works out just fine. Like everyone stays in their lane, the payment can happen, like. Yeah, no one got a point or anything, but customers stay where they are. But yeah, I guess it benefits everyone in the long run as well. So
it's kind of cool. So this is like continuing a trend from like my last couple of after talks where we've had a story that coming on stage I was quite pessimistic and quite cynical about. And actually the panels taught me around. And so I think, Jamie, you were convinced a little bit earlier than I was through Helen's great defense of this kind of thing, but actually I'm feeling pretty good about it.
Yeah, that collegiate, I hadn't really approached it from your point of view, which is the collegiate attitude of a bunch of businesses that have been in the market for a long time, breaking down those barriers and saying, hey, look, can we do something together? And the spirit of that and what that could potentially achieve if they focus it on other areas, very exciting. Like 2 scoops of that, please. That sounds amazing. And yeah, I think with this current incarnation of it, then I'm keen to see where it goes. And if anyone in the audience who has another opinion that's strong, I'd love to hear it. That's different to mine. Yeah, that's different to mine. If we talk afterwards, I'd love to because it's multiple layers, lots of different depths to this that I think is really interesting.
Yeah, I think the other interesting build is, so I think this is the second time actually they've tried to put a payments solution in to the Irish market. And the first time they did try and do something independent. This time they've embedded it, and the take up initial from the article, it seemed initially slightly more successful. And I say you look at Zelle in the States. So there are some interesting things to watch about this story and whether it succeeds, I think.
All right, well, we'll keep an eye on it.
Hey folks, David Breer here, CEO of 11FS. Here's something you might not know about me. I get a lot of people trying to impersonate me online, fake profiles, scam emails, the lot. And a big part of that comes from data brokers, hundreds of them, quietly collecting and selling your personal information. Your phone number, email, home address, job title, all out there and all fueling identity theft, scam calls, and spam. If you've ever searched your own name online, hands up, who hasn't? You'll know how exposed you really are. That's why we've partnered with Incogni. They contact 230 plus data brokers and tell them to delete your information properly and legally under GDPR and CCPA. Doing it yourself would take hundreds of hours. Incogni automates the whole thing and keeps working with repeat removal requests if your data reappears. I tried it and within days saw brokers deleting my data. You can even protect your family members too. Fintech Insider listeners get 60% off an annual plan. Just head to incogni.com/fintech insider and use code Fintech Insider. And yes, it's risk-free with a 30-day money-back guarantee. You'll find the link in the description.
As a chef, I know flavor doesn't begin in the kitchen. It begins on the land. And Westhome's nature-led Australian Wagyu is a story written in the landscape of Northern Australia. Cooking is storytelling, and Westhome Wagyu carries a story of Northern Australia itself. Raw, powerful, and deeply authentic. It's a testament to the passion and care raised in the rhythm of Northern Australia. I'm Chef Maylin from 88 Club in Los Angeles, and I invite you to visit westhome.com/Maylin to learn more and taste a story only Westhome nature-led Australian Wagyu can tell. That's WESTHOLME.com/MEILIN.
Okay, our next and our final main story of the evening. This one comes from The Guardian with the headline, Monzo under fire over, quote, shaming year-end reviews. Now, you might have seen this one. It's kind of divided opinion. It's a really interesting one, right? Because I think it gives us a discussion angle about brands sort of like trying to be more human in terms of how they engage with their customer base. So Monzo's annual Year in Monzo feature, which is similar to Spotify Wrapped, gives customers a personalized recap of their spending habits over the past year. The feature has come under criticism after one customer complained that the automated language used in her review felt judgmental and humiliating. Her summary described her spending on food delivery apps with phrases like, quote, you foraged and feasted, but mainly you fast fooded. Don't. The customer, who had an eating disorder, said the commentary was distressing and inappropriate because a bank cannot understand.
Now you feel guilty. Now you feel guilty for laughing. Yeah, you should have led with that, and then the line, and then no laughter. And now,
feel terrible. Yeah, the customer who had an eating disorder said the commentary was distressing and inappropriate because a bank cannot understand the personal context behind spending decisions. She escalated the complaint to the Financial Ombudsman Service, arguing the bank had used her financial data to generate, quote, humiliating behavioral commentary. After this news, lots of Monzo users shared their Monzo comments and forums. There were a couple that were, relatively more lighthearted, like, quote, Monzo told me I was Croydon's 12th most regular visitor to Greg's last year. Proudest day of my life.
Put it on the CV.
It feels like the funny part of that is Croydon. I don't really know why.
Yeah,
so before we start to discuss, again, a little bit of audience participation, maybe we can do a little bit of a survey. A little show of hands. Who's seen this year in review feature from Monzo and sort of was relatively happy with the comments that they got? Oh, that's lower than I was expecting. Who was a
handful of hands? That is 3 or 4 hands. That's unexpected.
This feels like I'm
going to have to review my opinion. I think I'm going to have to review my opinion. Yeah. I know, I'm going to stick to it.
I mean, this is one that we've talked about quite a bit before we've come on stage. You know, Monzo's obviously scaled enormously from its sort of very early days as the sort of darling of fintech in Shoreditch, obviously now hitting over 14 million customers in the UK. Is this like a scale problem? Like you can't really talk to people when you've got 14 million customers as you can when it's your sort of core audience of early adopters in the early days? What do you think it is?
I'm going to preface what I'm about to say with, I think that Monzo generates more goodwill from its clients because of its tone of voice than ill will. I genuinely think that, because I think there is with their particular user base, I think there is an appreciation that the bank talks to them like a normal human being in language that they can understand, and generally in a calming and warm, witty way. I think that's just a general principle. However, I do think that they got this in this particular user's case, and I've been trying to figure out how this happened, because the quote you pulled up is, there was laughter in the room. And when I first read it, I was like, yeah, it's quite lighthearted, sure. But the one that really stuck out to me, which felt, it kind of resonated in a schoolyard bully kind of way, which was, and it's quoted in the article, which is something that was referred back to in Monzo, and it said, you spent more than however many people on Just Eat. Did someone tell you to just stop? And that one, I think, depending on who you are, you could receive that in a jovial way. But that one felt slightly more sinister. It reminded me. I read it, and it reminded me of almost like a schoolyard bully line, because it was cutting wit. It wasn't war. There was no warmth to it. And Monzo have come out and said, these are generative. These weren't individual copywriters typing words to kind of make these jokes. But Monzo is one of the very few banks that publishes its tone of voice online. Like, you can go online now, you can Google Monzo tone of voice, you can see it all, and it's an incredible document. And it, like I said, it generates more goodwill than bad. But if that is the point of training something that's generative to provide these types of experiences, to create content online, because that's what it's for, then how did it get it this wrong? I think that's the thing that for me is the question, which is, if that's your training source to run something generative on it, and it ends up landing on that side of joking, i.e., in a negative sense, then it raises a big question mark for, let's stand back and let something generative communicate to our clients, unrestricted, because I think they do it really well, and even they've fallen foul of something bad happening.
I think a build on that as well in terms of the brand values that you mentioned is, I think we can all get things wrong when we're pushing messages at scale. The really interesting thing for me is, how did they let it get all the way to the ombudsman? How did they not just make it right with the customer when this was raised with them?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the part of the article that I think that's where they got it wrong. If they had managed the complaint in a more human way and really took her feeling into consideration, it would never have gotten that far. Because I think the reality is being in financial services, we have a responsibility. We have data that really is so sensitive and also really emotional. Financial services and people's money is a very emotional thing. And so we have a larger responsibility to, be more cautious. And I think if they had really taken stock and said, okay, this is not the best way to do this, let's go back and let's work with the customer to say, how do we do this better in the future? What would have actually been a good wrap up for you, right? That would have turned it into a very positive experience. I mean, because from my perspective, I love my wrap up, my Monzo wrap up. But again, it's about making it personal and really listening to your customers.
I think that's such a great point. And every customer interaction, positive or negative, is a learning experience, right?
There's also what do a lot of people use their Monzo account for? We were talking about this earlier.
Transactions.
And like their fun money, right?
Yeah.
They've got their Lloyd's bank account, current account, and they've got their Monzo card where they do like whatever. And maybe that's where, they've got it saved to their Just Eat or their Uber or their whatever. So it can kind of skew all that. It can kind of skew all of that. But I don't know. I think this one is, I think the marketing campaign that this, is the backbone of, I think is positive, but it does create an environment that these things can happen if you're not closely guarding the, how these messages are generated and rolled out.
It is. I mean, it is naturally skewed when it's focusing solely on transactions because it's not balanced with like, hey, look, you grew your savings balance by £1,000 this year, right? And that maybe gives you room for a bit more of a sort of good news story and a positive customer engagement. Helen, there is a question about how banks sort of turn that raw data into something sort of actually helpful for customers that it feels like maybe Monzo hasn't nailed here, but how are you guys thinking about that?
I love the way Marisha spoke about it. It is a privilege and a responsibility to look after somebody's money. And it's a huge opportunity in terms of, can you actually really help somebody? And there's so many opportunities to really help. So I think the way we're thinking about it is, where are those help opportunities? And I think about it in sort of two ways, really. You start to think about the simple contact and nudges. So, you might be about to go into an overdraft, or you might, that's really genuinely helping somebody, or that's really powerful. I'm gonna do the AI bingo as well. We were talking backstage. Where is this technology going, and how incredibly helpful could it be to start entering into a natural language conversation about your finances and what you could be doing, and how you might think differently about your finances? It's going to be based on trust. It's going to be based on accessibility. It's going to be based on, and it's going to be based on, does it empower you? And I think that's the way I think about it. That's the way we're thinking about it.
I think that point about trust is so important. There's almost something in this for me, which is like, has Monzo earned the right to sort of have this tone of voice and sort of engage customers in this way? And it doesn't feel like, obviously, across the board, they really have. Clem, what was your sort of reaction to this one?
Yeah, definitely. I think the interesting side story for me here is like how do these like two departments even got connected in the first place? Like this was like two things that should be living on two entirely separate planes. Like speaking from my perspective, like we work with large financial institution. A constant discussion is about like how do we segregate like all kind of data access so that the person doing the system working on authorization cannot see anything but just like the balance and like how do you even like get into a world where like the marketing department get access to like so it feels like an interesting like organizational architecture sort of clue in terms of like what's going on. So that's the interesting like crispy bit for me is like here so I want to think in that direction, but it feels like a very weird like segregation of like user data concerns, system access here, and it feels like to your point, like I feel like this is a very like it should be an elevating mission to be like the custodian of trust in terms of like we're going to be holding your money, we're going to be doing that forever, and that's the promise, the essential promise that we have as like builders in fintechs should be pretty simple, written on the wall, like always true. And this feels like this kind of like outweighed like risk benefit, like compromising the mission kind of situation that actually went live. So that's a very interesting story for sure.
I think on that point about it being a privilege and sort of wanting to do right by the customer, and Marisha, I'm going to come to you on this one as well, because I think it's sort of right in your wheelhouse. There's an argument here that maybe we're missing, which is I think there's something about the year in Monzo, which is about starting a conversation around money and personal finances and all of that sort of stuff. The way that I sort of relate that is, I spoke to a few of my friends, close friends, over a drink at Christmas. We were talking about, what's your age that you got from what you listened to the music on the Spotify Wrapped, right? And that actually started a conversation. We actually had quite a long conversation about it. It was really good fun. Is there something where, okay, maybe from a tone of voice perspective, they've got some of this wrong, but is there something noble in actually the format and maybe wanting to start a conversation around finances and personal financial management?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the intention was great. And I think starting that conversation where you, as a bank, are showing your customer that you know who they are, you see them as an individual and they matter. I think that is a very important conversation to start. It's also about, like Helen said, building that trust, because that's how you build trust in this day and age with banking right now. It's really understanding your customers' needs and then, preempting the next product or feature that they want. But you start knowing that by talking to your customers, understanding what are their needs, what do they need to keep their financial mechanisms, in a way that they want it, right? But the way they did it was incorrect. I think how they should have started was, you spent X amount on Just Eats. Oh, do you know you could have invested this, right? So maybe building in some kind of literacy into it, or, being more proactive around, oh, you saved this much, but do you know you could have taken out a different savings or interest-bearing savings account?
Yeah.
So I think there's a different way that they need to connect with their customers. It's not about shaming them in this case around what they purchased. It's about saying, how do I help you as your bank manage your finances in a better way? And so definitely the conversation is great. There's a lot to learn around how they do it.
Yeah, and I think when communicating in this way, you either need to be passive, i.e. there's no judgment, you're just relaying the data back to them. You need to provide guidance, as you say, maybe you should think about this instead of this. And if you'd have done that, look what would have happened. That'd have been really cool. I think the bit that falls foul here is that it's opinionated.
Yes.
And it's opinionated in a personal way. And yeah, and I think it's clearly an incredibly successful marketing strategy. It's rolled out across a number of industries, not just financial services.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think, like I say, I think they generate more goodwill. I think they got this one somehow. It came out wrong. I think next year I'm still going to look forward to my year in Monzo,
And
I'll see how opinionated they are with me next year.
Yeah, but equally, we're here talking about it, and maybe there's no such thing as bad press. Although this does feel a little bit sort of bad pressy.
It's also important to know that millions of Monzo customers were also very happy with their wrap.
Yeah.
Right? So it's also about understanding the customer, because younger generation, actually, they'll take it with a bit of a laugh, right? But it's important to understand, human dynamics.
All right, well, look, that is the end of our 3 stories. However, the fun is not over. Anyone fun is a loose definition. However, anyone who's a regular listener to the show will sort of recognize our "and finally" segment as something that's a little bit more lighthearted. We obviously have a very special St. Patrick's Day themed "and finally" segment for you all. The great news is we're sort of asking you to get involved, so you can look forward to that. So we're going to quiz the panel and our audience's knowledge on Irish fintech, maybe a little bit about Guinness too. So again, something to look forward to. Classic game of higher or lower. I hope you guys are ready. This is how it works. Right, I'm going to start with a fact, and then I'm going to ask each panelist whether they think the next answer is higher or lower. Audience will ask you to shout out and play along too. So, for example, Fintech Insider turns 10 this year, but how old is Irish football legend Roy Keane? Is he higher or lower? Congratulations.
We all win.
He is higher. He's 54.
I hope they're all that easy, because pub quizzes are not my forte.
If not, we can hunt the production team down after Helen.
We work together.
Yeah, I think you
Yeah,
can.
teams. Yeah.
Okay, I think we're ready to go. I think we all get the format. If you're listening at home, play along. Let us know how you did in the episode's comments. Now, look, obviously, since we're 11FS, we have to start on brand. We're going to start with the number 11. And the first question is, what is the price of a pint of Guinness in euros in Dublin's famous Temple Bar on St. Patrick's Day? Now, look, we just need the number. Please don't start working through complex conversion rates and all of that sort of stuff. Do we think, and Jamie, I'm going to come to you on this, and you can confer with your fellow panelists, do we think the price is higher or lower than 11?
Well, I
think it might go higher.
I had my stag do there.
Oh, really?
And I don't remember much of it, but I think it was expensive in Temple Bar. So I think higher.
As an Irish person, I get told repeatedly by people who've never even been to Ireland how expensive it is. So
definitely higher.
What do the audience think?
What do the audience think? We're saying just raise your hands and give me a big cheer for higher. Higher. All right, raise your hands and give me a big cheer for lower.
Less. Significantly less.
Literally everyone is out. It's €10 according to this.
So, I think that...
Let's go lower! Yeah!
I have to say, I was going to say lower because you did say on St. Patrick's Day. And if it was high on St. Patrick's Day, that would have been a problem.
That's true. Do you think that we're very generous people and we just give discounts on our
come on.
national holiday?
You're all welcome.
Right, this one I'm going to have to word quite carefully because we got quite confused in the green room before we started. How many employees does Monzo plan to have in its Irish office by 2027? Don't tell me that's weirdly specific. Is it higher or lower than 10? And Helen, I'm going to come to you, but again, you can confer.
I mean, this is a 50-50 guess, right? But it's got to be more than 10, hasn't it? I'm going to go higher.
We happy with higher, audience?
It's probably just 10 in compliance.
Is anyone just going to roll the dice on lower? Oh, yeah, a couple. All right, you guys are out as well. It's definitely higher. So 70. Yeah. All right. Continuing the Irish theme, this is a good one. Stripe was formed by Irish brothers Patrick and John Collison. How much was it worth in billions in their latest share sale? So is it higher or lower than 70? Clem, come to you, but again, feel free to confer.
Higher.
We all happy with higher?
Yeah.
Audience, higher? Higher? Anyone want to stake their reputation on lower? Yeah, God loves a trier. It was higher, 159. All right, next. Marusha, we're coming to you on this one. Many banks in Ireland charge a fee for holding a current account. I'm just pausing for booze. How much in euros would an account at AIB, booze, like booze.
Booze, pausing for booze. Pausing for people to get more booze, or pausing for booze.
I didn't see any of the production team running to me with
exactly.
Many banks in Ireland charge a fee for holding a current account. Oh, so good. How much in euros would an account at AIB cost someone a year? Is it higher or lower than 159 billion? Million?
Gosh, I'm going to say lower just because I hope it's lower.
This feels like a real stab in the dark. Audience, give us a cheer if you think it's lower than... I'm going to say that's like 159 euros per year rather than the 159 billion valuation. Anyone fancy higher? I love these people just sat in the dark. Just being like, yeah, man. Oh my God, it's so much lower. 18.
Thank God.
Yeah, exactly. Billion. All right, okay, this is the last one. This is for the whole panel. Guinness Zero. And we do have some available if you want to try it, if you haven't already, although it seems like everybody in the world has, going on this answer. The non-alcoholic variant now makes up what percentage of total Guinness trade sales? Is it higher or lower than 18? Jamie, I'll start with you. And this is not a confer. This is like...
Oh, this is an individual. I think...
It's growing, right?
Higher? I'm feeling higher.
Yeah.
You think higher?
I've got some.
Helen, you happy with higher?
I'm going higher.
Higher.
Higher. Clem, you happy with that?
I'm going to go for lower.
We're all going higher, okay. So, audience... Oh, I said lower. All right, cool. Yeah. Oh, good. You try this, it's hard. All right, audience, let's get a big cheer if you think it's lower than 18. Anyone for higher? Yeah, you guys win. Can you believe that 20% of their global trade sales?
Thank you.
I can't believe that. I can't believe that. Yeah.
But cool, good, nice to end on a surprise. And that is it. That's all we've got time for tonight. Thank you for your amazing good humor. Thank you for participating. A huge thank you to my co-host, Jamie, our wonderful panelists, Helen, Clem, Marusha. Our amazing sponsors, Formance, Paymentology, and Backbase. And the biggest thank you of all to all of you for joining us. If you're listening at home, thanks for tuning in. And if you're in the room, I'll see you later at the bar for a pint of Guinness or Guinness Zero shortly. Thank you all. Good night.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Been out here all morning. Not a single bite. Guess the fish finally figured it out. Just like hackers do when Cisco Duo's on guard. With Duo's end-to-end phishing resistance, every login, every device, every user stays protected. No hooks, no catches, no bites. Cisco Duo. Phishing season is over. Learn more at duo.com.